A friend in need is a friend indeed. And this is why Douglas Murray is such a unique and special personality in a world that has absolutely lost its mind. In a world that blames the victim, that blames Israel for the atrocities of October 7th, he is almost the single voice of sanity in a world that makes no sense, that's lost its sense of direction, up from down, right from left, east from west. Whilst everybody is drinking the Kool-Aid, Douglas Murray is almost alone as he declares, fearlessly and without apology, that the emperor is indeed walking naked. Watch this eloquent representation of what's going on in the world today from the mouth of Douglas Murray himself. Here goes.
Into the book. Why did you decide to write it?
Two reasons. The atrocities of October the 7th, 2023 are a type of atrocity that we have seen elsewhere in the West, in the Manchester Arena bombing, the Ariana Grande bombing, the Bataclan massacre in Paris, the Pulse nightclub attack in Orlando, Florida. But this was on a scale far, far beyond them even. This was 1,200 people massacred in a morning, including at a dance party in the south of Israel, by jihadists, Hamas, who committed crimes so appalling I can't describe some of them on air. They also kidnapped 250 Israelis from their homes. I noticed very early in this that two things would happen. One was there was a great risk that the actual crimes, the atrocities, were not going to be documented enough. The world was going to pass over them and talk about Israel's military response to get back the hostages and to kill the leadership of Hamas. I wanted to go, and I did go straight away to speak to the survivors, the families, the wounded, people in the hospitals, and much more, and tried to make sure that I had as good a sense of the day as it's possible to get. Second thing was that I was embedded with the IDF in Gaza and Lebanon and Israel and elsewhere to make sure that I saw firsthand, and I recount in the book, how the IDF responded to this atrocity. But the third thing, which was on my mind from October the 8th, was what has gone wrong in the rest of the West? What has gone wrong in the UK? That, as we know, the Telegraph splashed the story a few weeks ago. On the day of October the 7th, so-called pro-Palestinian groups, who are actually just anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, organized demonstrations for that night and the night after. In what other world are 1,200 people burned alive in their homes, raped and beheaded, and people in our society immediately decide to victimize the victims?
Yes.
And this is the question I ask in the book, among other things, is what has gone wrong here that we have, from days after October the 7th, hundreds of thousands of people on our streets celebrating the death cult of Hamas, not siding with a democracy like Israel, an ally of ours that makes mistakes like all allies do, but not siding with our allies, but siding with the death cult. This is an enormous civilizational challenge to us in Britain, in America, in the rest of the West. And until we grasp the obscenity of what has happened on our streets in the last 18 months, what has been happening in our mosques, in our streets, we will not address this problem, and the problem that Israel has stared in the face of will happen here as well.
Well, what is to blame for this figure? A poll last year of British Muslims taken by the Henry Jackson Society found that only 25% believed that rapes or murders had actually taken place on October the 7th.
It's an utter obscenity, and it points to how many sick people there are in our society. We have had, in the last 10 years, a slogan in the wake of Me Too and so on, believe all women. But it turns out that the rule doesn't apply if the women are Jews, if the women are Israelis. I have seen the evidence of this. I have spoken to the people who have gone through this, the victims of rapes on the 7th and people who saw the dead bodies of women who've been raped. The idea that we have such a sick coterie in our country that does not believe raped women because the people who carried out the attacks are Hamas or the people who suffered them are Israelis is, again, a problem in our society here. If this happened with any other group of people, if there were thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in the UK who did not believe it when I don't know, let's play it another way around. If a Muslim woman in the UK said she'd been raped by white men, Jess Phillips and everybody else would be all over that. We would know the name of the one case where that had happened, especially if it was for racial and religious reasons. But Jess Phillips and co, they don't care if, first of all, the victims don't suit their victim hierarchy, and secondly, if the perpetrators aren't comfortable for them.
So there may be sinister motivations behind people not believing that Israeli women were raped and tortured before they were murdered on October the 7th. It could be born out of ignorance. It could be because pro-Palestinianism has become a popular cause in our university campuses. It could be a kind of following of a herd mentality.
Or all of the above.
Yeah.
And people, of course, don't forget, I mean, a lot of people need to be taught into hatred. You have to be taught into it. We have to ask ourselves, why is this being taught? Why is pro-extremist ideology being pushed in this country? Why are we so far behind tackling it still? Goes back to my point. Look at the number of reports and inquiries. Every time an atrocity happens in the UK, we have another darn report, another inquiry.
Lessons will be learned.
And the lessons never are learned. Unless we grapple with this in Britain today, we will see what Israel suffered again here in the UK.
But isn't propaganda also part of the explanation? You probably have to accept, as I do too, that Israel has lost the war on social media when it comes to informing the public about what's happened. How much of the data out of Gaza do you think is trustworthy? Because it's very difficult. I know you've been very close, but you can't get British journalists in there to verify much.
Well, I've been in there plenty, and other journalists have been, actually. I've been in Gaza with other British journalists.
OK, so it is possible to get better data than that supplied by the Palestinian health authorities?
That's tricky because, of course, Hamas still runs Gaza. And the BBC and others run the Hamas Health Ministry figures as if they're legitimate. Undoubtedly, there have been civilian casualties in Gaza. Undoubtedly, Hamas has talked them up. But equally undoubtedly, Hamas started the war. Hamas is losing the war. That means that Hamas fighters are being killed at a very high rate. The Hezbollah and Hamas leadership has been decimated in the last 18 months. But fourthly, yes, because of the nature of which the death cult of Hamas operates, they deliberately, and this cannot be said often enough, they deliberately flout every law of war and make sure that every law of war that the IDF uses is used against them. It is not meant to be permitted to dress as a civilian whilst being a fighter, to hide in civilian houses, to fire RPGs from mosques, to shoot from hospitals, to hold hostages in basements of hospitals, to use civilian houses as torture chambers. There was one guy, I mention him in the book, among the 4 so-called Al Jazeera journalists who were killed, who Al Jazeera said, oh, these are just innocent journalists. One of the journalists in question was shown when the IDF collected laptops in Gaza to be one of the heads of Hamas's rocket department. So, innocent journalists, but just built rockets in the evening, as I'm sure you and I do, Camilla. We'll leave this studio and go straight back to RPG assemblement.
Yes,
and the second one on that quickly was that one of the people who contributed to Al Jazeera and other media during this war wrote all these pieces about how terrible it was for the citizens of Gaza to suffer the IDF's retaliation for the 7th. Forgot to mention to his readers that he was holding Israeli hostages in the basement of his house where he was torturing them every day.
Although the IDF have made mistakes themselves.
For
We've
sure.
had that aid convoy, 15 aid workers, we believe, killed recently.
Well, that's still being disputed, but I don't doubt that there will be innocent people who have been killed. And the reason for that is that Hamas travels in ambulances, in aid convoys. It uses every single thing it can. And until people realize that one of the things about the death cult mindset is the society we are from wants to minimize civilian casualties. Hamas thrives on civilian casualties. We love life, they love death. And the literal taunt of Hamas, Hezbollah and the others is, that the Westerners, the liberal democratic Western mindset believes in life, and they believe that's something they can use against us. I say it's one of our virtues.
Douglas Murray, thank you very much indeed. Your book on democracies and death cults is out now.
Absolutely brilliant. The voice of Douglas Murray is the voice of courage, a voice that shows us that truth and popularity are most often at odds with each other. They're inversely proportionate. Just because something is popular, it does not mean that it's right. And just because something is right, it's in many cases going to be unpopular. The weak amongst us will choose that which is popular. The bold and the courageous amongst us will choose that which is right. May we all make the choice to choose right from wrong, good from bad, the blessing from the curse. And may we be able to spread that light, that love, and that consciousness all over the world through our fearless representations and our fearless testimonies. Don't be intimidated. Spread the light, spread the truth. The darkness will run away from you.